Wight County School Board's in session. Madam Clerk, please take a roll.
Mr. Colick, Mr. Cunningham, Mrs. Perkins,
Here.
Mr. Wooster,
Here.
and Mr. Marsh.
Here. Madam Clerk, for the listening audience, Mr. Colick and Mr. Colick and Cunningham had personal matters tonight. Over to you, sir.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda for closed session as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Perkins,
Yes.
Mr. Wooster,
Yes.
and Mr. Marsh.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I move to amend the agenda to add food service positions and to move agenda item 18.1 to item 14.6 for information only and approve the amended agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Perkins,
Yes.
Mr. Wooster,
Yes.
and Mr. Marsh.
Yes, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I move to go into closed session to review the personnel report and addendum posted on board docs under Personnel tab number 16.1 as authorized by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1 for purposes of discussion and consideration of prospective candidates of Isle of Wight Public Schools for employment, contract changes, transfers, salary adjustments, supplemental contracts, deletions, supplemental pay, resignations of Isle of Wight County Public Schools employees, and to discuss matters involving one foreign exchange student that would involve the disclosure of information information contained in a scholastic record concerning students as authorized by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A2, and move to go into closed session to receive briefing from staff regarding legal strategies concerning potential breach of contract litigation as authorized by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A7, and to go into closed session to discuss and consider the performance and evaluation of the superintendent as authorized by Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Perkins,
Yes.
Mr. Wooster,
Yes.
and Mr. Marsh.
Yes, motion passes. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Okay. On that, we'll go into closed session. Wight County School Board's in session.
Mr. Chair, I move that the closed meeting was conducted in conformity with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act as required by Section 2.23712D of the Code of Virginia, and certify that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements were discussed, and only such business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wooster?
Yes.
And Mr. Marsh?
Yes, motion passes. Mr. Vice Chair.
Would everyone please stand for a moment of silence and pledge to the allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Wooster. Good evening. It is Thursday, July 11th, 2024. We're here tonight for our regular school board meeting, and we're located in Westside Elementary School. And our mission is to prepare students for college, career, and life. Ms. Briggs, let's jump right into it. It's July, summer break, so we'll try to make this as painless as possible tonight.
All right. Yeah, so for our Olive White Achievers tonight, we had some spring sports that wrapped up about the same time as our June meeting, so we pushed them to July for recognition, and I think we can all acknowledge it's summer. So the attendance may be a bit light tonight for our achievers, but we still want to recognize them on their outstanding seasons. And just to let people know, the vision for Wight County Schools is to create a learning environment that will enable every child to discover his or her unique gifts and talents. And the White Achievers section of our board meeting gives us an opportunity to recognize and celebrate our students and staff for their unique talents and gifts. Now, when I call your name, if you're here for being recognized as an achiever, you should have received a certificate from your coach. Bring your certificate up, and Dr. Chris Coleman, who's standing right over here, will have a nice pin for you. And if you would stand in front of me until we finish recognizing the team, then we'll have everybody turn around, get a round of applause, and we'll take you over to the backdrop for a photo. So without further ado, we are going to start with softball, and I don't think we have any of our softball players with us tonight, but they did qualify for the state tournament, and we do want to recognize them. So if you will just bear with me while I read their names and their awards from this season. The head coach was Kathy Riddick, assistant coach Kim Johnston, and equipment managers Lexi Wiggins and Maddie Young. Players are Chloe Colbert, Cheyenne DeBusk, Riley Emmons, Brooklyn McCool, Peyton McCool, and Peyton also received Honorable Mention All-Region. Kayla Young, Honorable Mention All-Region. Peyton Gilliam, Second Team All-Region Designated Player. Kylie Mintz, Second Team All-Region Pitcher. Donetta Powell, Second Team All-Region Shortstop. Abigail Whirl, Second Team All-Region Outfield. Cassidy Bridges, First Team All-Region First Base. Grace Dodson, First Team All-Region Second Base. And Emily Johnston, First Team All-Region Outfield. And we congratulate the softball team on such an outstanding season. Nice job. Yeah, very good. Moving on to baseball. Back again this year. We have head coach Christopher Nolan. So Coach Nolan, if you'll come on up, you'll be our first person, and then we'll read off your players. Assistant coach was Steve Hedgepeth, and manager was Penelope Simpson. From the baseball team, we have Connor Allison, Cole Barnes, Jackson Batts, Daniel Cooper, Jackson Dickinson, Connor Keating, Jack Morey, Austin Ray, Javen Reed, Keegan Saunders, Christian Velez, Jacob Webster, Brian Williams, Nathan Lamarche, And Nathan was also honorable mention, all-region. Congratulations, Nathan. Kelson Soden. Kelson was also honorable mention, all-region. Ty Hedgepeth was second-team all-region pitcher. Walton Bondurant was first-team all-region shortstop. Evan Brobst was first-team all-region outfield. And Maddox Brown was first-team all-region pitcher and designated hitter and first-team all-state designated hitter. So we congratulate you guys on another outstanding season and getting back to states this year. Nicely done. And we'll get you to go to the backdrop. Mr. Elliott will get a quick picture. While Mr. Elliott's doing that, I'll go ahead and move to girls soccer. Girls soccer also had an outstanding season and made it to the state tournament. Their head coach is Nathan Jones, and I know Coach Jones is with us tonight. We also have assistant coach Jim Pereira and manager Kendall Glover. Players are Ashley Bryant, Caitlin Senna, Cadence DeStefano, Shelby Huffaker, Bailey Jones, Kayla McMillian, Molly Myers, Sophie Prince, Paige Rainey, Rachel Triplett, Addison Walker, Mila Baggett, who was honorable mention all-region, Sophie Shipman, who was honorable mention all-region, Reese Avant, second team all-region forward, Natalie Jones, second team all-region midfield, Brooke Paul, second team all-region defense, Lydia Jones, first team all-region forward, Brianna Curro, first team all-region midfield and second team all-state midfield, and Kennedy Soden, first team all-region defense, first team all-state defense. So we want to congratulate you, Coach Jones, on another outstanding season. Thank you very much. Who just showed up? Oh, and you are? And Walton Bondurant with baseball. Thank you for joining us, Walton. All right, and our last team, boys soccer. Head coach of boys soccer is Jason Henderson. Coach Henderson's going to come on up. And Coach Henderson was selected as the Bay Rivers District Coach of the Year and the Region 4A Coach of the Year. Yeah. Assistant coach is Gerald Slade and Devin Rotruck. And players are Larry Black III, Aaron Carroll, Daniel Cox, Jaden Goodian, Elijah Hall, Gordon Holloway, and you can come up when I call your name. Are they coming? Oh, not yet. I haven't hit one yet? Okay, sorry. Sorry. Christopher Leslie, Ian Lindsay, Robert Jackson, Carson McMillan, Troy Myers, Colin Phillips, Isaiah Robertson Johnson, Cohen Rotruck, Gerald Slade, Miles Slade, there we go, Colson Turner, Jeremy Walker, Nathaniel Condit, who received was honorable mention all region, Peyton Shire, honorable mention all region, Tanner Clifton, second team all region defense, Jackson Young, second team all region forward, Eli Allen, first team all region defense, Brody Doolin, first team all region midfield, Carter Getz, first team all region forward, Jackson Stanley, first team all region goalie and second team all state goalie, Logan Young, first team all region defense, second team all state defender, and Andy Mwapu, first team all region midfield, and first team all state midfield. Who is it? Tristan Walker. Tristan? And the manager is Tristan Walker. Come on up, Tristan. And it's nice to keep having the boys soccer team coming back year after year. I know you guys have had a great season, and we thank you for being here tonight so we can celebrate you. So at this time, we're going to have you go over to the backdrop, and Mr. Elliott's going to get a photo of all you guys, and I do appreciate you taking time out of your summer break to be here. Thanks so much. And if there are parents or family members here, this is a great time. You can come up and get a picture as well if you would like. It's the perfect time to do it. Are you good, Ms. Clifton? Are you good? Okay. All right. That's going to conclude Achievers tonight. Once again, congratulations to all the spring sports athletes for making state tournament, and thank you to their family members and coaches who came out tonight for support.
Thanks, Ms. Briggs. Madam Clerk. No.
In accordance to policy BDDH-E, presentation of information on any subject will be concluded at the discretion of the board. No person will be recognized to speak more than once. Citizens scheduled on the agenda to speak will be permitted 4 minutes maximum time for their presentation. Delegations will be requested to limit their speakers to 2. Persons speaking are asked to be specific, state the issues for the board's consideration, and attach a copy of your prepared remarks. If you have prepared remarks, they should be given to the board clerk. Please do not approach the board members. Any matter relating to specific students will be heard by the school board only in a closed meeting. And first we have Greg Brown.
Hello. Hope everybody's having a good summer. So, good evening, board members, Dr. Kramer, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I need to start by stating my disappointment that our school board members have withdrawn Wight County School Board from the Virginia School Boards Association. Since we are all committed to excellence in our local public education, I would think that maintaining membership in the organization that has been advocating and supporting public education in the Commonwealth since, I believe, 1906 would be an easy decision to make. He's not here, but I'd like to thank Mr. Cunningham for articulating a number of benefits to membership and for voting to remain associated with them. To expand on Mr. Cunningham's points, I'd like to mention 2 additional benefits that we were getting when we were members of the VSBA. The first relates to their advocacy efforts, or lobbying, if you choose to call it that they undertake on behalf of the member school boards. As several of you have pointed out in the discussions around the budget, the Commonwealth needs to be doing far more financially to support our public education statewide. The VSBA has been advocating for several changes at the state level that would dramatically help our funding situation, and it deserves our support for those efforts. Second, looking at their task forces, it appears they have a task force set up on school construction and infrastructure. And as this is probably the largest single financial issue that our school district is confronting, I would think that participation in that task force would be beneficial for our district, especially as we continue to grow. I believe last year, Mr. Kolick mentioned that some of their positions disagreed with his religious beliefs. As this is the public school system, I don't see where the religious beliefs of anybody have any bearing on my children's education. I'm also sure that you are all aware, per VSBA's own manual, no school board in the VSBA is bound by any position adopted by the Virginia School Boards Association. Should we happen to disagree with any legislative position that they adopt, our local board is fully within their rights to adopt an opposing position. In view of all the above, I must admit that I do not understand the recently adopted action to remove ourselves from the SBSA. It seems like we could easily choose to remain a part of the Virginia School Boards Association, retaining the benefits of their advocacy and support, while choosing to differ on any policy position that we disagree with. I'm further disappointed by some of the members of our school board joining the School Board Member Alliance. I find it troubling that 4 out of the 5 board members have chosen to join an organization that supports taking money away from public schools. Additionally, the past behavior of some of the key members of the School Board Member Alliance show both insensitivity to large sections of our population and highly questionable judgment. Allegedly, some of the key members of the SBMA have even bullied people that choose to disagree with them. I am extremely disappointed that you are tacitly endorsing this behavior by choosing to join their organization, and I'd honestly hope for better from all of you. Thank you. Good night.
Reverend Williams.
Good evening, school board members, chairperson, and our superintendent, Dr. Kramer. I come to you this afternoon with a concern about policy making. Nothing is more suicidal to a human race than to have men with harmful intention making decisions for public services. Harmful decisions which are used to create a policy or policies that are aimed at changing the course of America and becoming more united. Policies that are aimed at reversing the effort to become a more inclusive community. Harmful policies aimed at changing public schools to private schools. Suicidal and harmful policies that well-meaning good folks, such as our administrators, teachers, and staff, must both abide by and serve under. Any board of great authority can and will make harmful suicidal decisions when they have harmful suicidal intention and lack the knowledge of what a policy is and how their emotions, their feelings, their beliefs, religion, political affiliation, or personal desire is used as the base for deciding. When I hear board members calling a policy a rule, I know they suffer with either much harmful intention or ignorancy about problem finding or decision making and policy making. Unfortunately, our board may be afflicted by both. A policy is a general guideline, and a rule is set principle or regulation governing conduct, action, procedure, or arrangement. When I saw and heard the supposed reasons for the recent withdrawal from the VSBA, Virginia School Board Association, with the intent to join the School Board Alliance, I instantly knew that our board is made up of men and women who haven't the slightest clue as to the suicidal harm that they are causing for themselves, our community, and America. And they do possess harmful suicide intention. My responsibility today is to be sure that the blood is not on my hand. So I am calling your attention to Proverbs 26 and 27. Whoso diggeth a pit shall fall therein, and he that rolleth a stone, it will return upon him. So I advise you today to secure this verse of Scripture and seek to get a greater understanding of decision making.
Time. Herb DeGroft.
Herb DeGroff, District 5, Smithfield. Mr. Chairman, bravo Zulu for your action relative to undertaking to get us back on track and doing some unannounced screening in parking lots for illicit drugs, et cetera, in our schools. I didn't realize that a past superintendent had stopped that. Shame on them. I strongly recommend that you put this into a policy so that no future superintendent can abrogate the idea, because prevention is extremely important. It's a whole lot better than remediation. And it so happens that in the local newspaper this past week, local divisions consider opening regional recovery school for students working to overcome substance abuse disorders, because they've noted that there's been a 500% increase amongst 15 to 24-year-olds since 1999 of overdose deaths due to opioids. And hey, I'm going to give Ms. Whitlow a copy of the policy that I had that every employee had to sign when they came to work at Smithfield Packing in order to make sure that we had as drug-free a workplace as possible, something for you to consider for all the employees of Wight County Schools. Bravo Zulu also on getting out of the VSBA and doing your own thing. I don't think you'll regret that, and I know that the five of you, including Mr. Cunningham, who voted against it, will make sure that your new association works. Now, I have some other concerns. The recommendation for a compliance officer for Title IX and the SOQ compliance report for this current school year that's going to be submitted in August. For the last 2 years, the IWCS board has voted to approve the human resource director to serve as the Title IX compliance officer for employees and students. Well, hey, why would we change that? If it isn't broke, why are we going to fix it and pass it off to the Director of Support Services? I did this for Smithfield Packing Company, and it's a job that requires somebody who's been doing it and knows what the P's and Q's are. So I'd recommend that you not approve this, or at least table it tonight and get into some further discussion with the superintendent as to why they want to do this. Secondly, the SOQ compliance report that has been submitted wrong for a couple of years because people chose to overlook the fact that they answered no and yes when they should have answered yes and no to any number of things. The SOQ compliance report has 8 standards and other reporting requirements that provide statements that will determine the compliance or non-compliance of all the standards of quality for this school year by IWCS. Let's be sure that we answer these questions correctly. It's my opinion that the IWCS division during the 23-24 school year was not in compliance with Standard 2, Standard 3, or Standard 7, and wasn't in compliance with other reporting requirements, because
1 minute.
we violate school division's requirements to provide teachers a planning period unencumbered of any teaching or supervisory duties. That's real plain and simple. And that's been documented by the superintendent remarks he made back on 26 March in a presentation, and also in the Smithfield Times when they reported on this. Specifically, as the auditor said, public school divisions are required to submit the financial data from the prior school year annual on September the 15th as a component of the document as shown in the annual school report. Most divisions request an extension. Wight never even made it by the 31st of December. And another reporting compliance with staffing requirements in 8 VAC 20-3131-240. This includes teachers having planning periods, because there are numerous middle and high school teachers that don't have a planning period.
Time.
You'll be getting another email later tonight in more detail.
Martha Jackson.
Martha Evans Jackson, District 3, Chairman Marsh, school board members, and Superintendent Dr. Kramer. Since 3 of the current school board members have been seated, it has been one of your main priorities to move away from the VSBA to the SBMA, citing SMBA is cost effective. Is it the cost-effective factor or the large conservative view in your ability to write policy and procedure initiatives? You say the VSBA is a lobbying entity. The SBMA states on its website that it is, and I quote, a nonpartisan association dedicated to empowering school board members to effectively serve their communities. The SBMA has endorsements from a long list of Republican politicians and identifies the group as conservative with connections to other far-right initiatives. Sherry Story, and head of the SMBA, touts the SBMA as a conservative alternative to the VSBA. Let's not head down a slippery slope. The board must have an unclouded vision for education. It is essential to always keep the best interests of all students at the front and center of your every decision. People who serve on our school board should be real advocates for our students and not personal views. School boards are made up of people with vastly different skill sets. They have an obligation to use these skills for the benefits of all those who they represent and not just those in the district where they live. Maybe a field trip, a pop-up meet and greet to connect with persons in districts other than yours to hear their concerns. When school begins in September, put on your school hat. Listen to someone who doesn't look like you. Be relentless in finding out what you can do to make sure the educational journey is a success. Many people run for a school board position because they have a specific agenda. One of 2 things happen. Either they realize once they are on the inside that their perceptions were wrong, or they look at what actually is going on in the schools and push to make it better. Let's make it better. Thank you.
That was the last speaker.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to speak on tonight? Okay. Thanks, everybody, for coming out to speak. And that takes us to item 13.1. It's an action item, superintendent's designees. Dr. Kramer?
Mr. Chair, I concur with the motion as it is written.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve Dr. Christopher Coleman and Mrs. Susan Getz as superintendent's designees through September 1, 2025.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Dr. Kramer, I just put you on the spot here for the listening audience. Please tell us what exactly Dr. Coleman and Mrs. Getz do as your designees.
Very simply, Dr. Coleman is the Deputy Superintendent for Operations, so those areas include transportation, grounds, foods, and some other areas. And by and large, Mrs. Getz, Deputy Getz, is responsible for instruction in all of the areas that come in under that area. And given that we have 2 deputies, the reason we have 2 recommendations here, if there's a concern that is in the operations area, I would like those concerns to be addressed by Dr. Coleman. Equally, if there are concerns that are in the instructional area, Mrs. Getz can respond effectively on my behalf if I am not able to respond for whatever reason.
Thank you, sir. Pending any other comments, Madam Clerk, take a vote.
Mrs. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wooster?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes, motion passes. That moves us over to 13.2, Mr. Cooprider.
Good evening, Board. Dr. Kramer. This is a request for purchase of student Chromebooks for FY25. This includes 2 grades and totals 950 devices at $319,000. I'm sorry, I forgot the exact number.
343.
I was a little off. I apologize. $343,000, which it does include a 4-year dropkick warranty.
All right, sir. Any questions from the board? Just for clarification in the listening audience, this was all discussed and budgeted for this year. This is no surprise. This is.
Yes, sir.
All right. Hearing any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the purchase of Chromebooks in the amount of $343,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wooster?
Yes.
And Mr. Marsh?
Yes, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooprider. That takes us to 13.3, food services position. That's another action item. I believe that's Dr. Coleman.
Mr. Chair, school board members, here to talk to you tonight about 3 positions for food service and the approval for those positions. As you know, we've already undertaken taking food service in-house instead of vendoring out with the outsourced company of Aramark. At this time, we're rebuilding the interior of the department with personnel. This summer, we're going to focus on personnel as well as training for those individuals. With that stated, 3 positions that are going to be essential for food service are 3 positions that we've had in the past and 3 positions that we've had all along. We have paid for these positions through food service. When we were under the contract with Chartwell, we had a director, individual who fell under a director, and of course an administrative assistant that was with those individuals. So we're paying for them with the overall contract of Chartwell. When we moved from Chartwell to Aramark, once again, we're paying for a director, an individual under director, and then we're paying for an administrative assistant for those positions also. So once again, the positions were paid for at that time. Moving in-house, what we would like to do to start off is ensure that we keep the same prototype but in-house also. So when you're looking at a $2.7 million contract or higher to a $2.9 million contract, what you want to do is make sure that you have the proper oversight and the proper individuals in place to make sure that we are really following through. If you remember maybe 5 months ago, we were faced with an FR that had 5 different areas that we had to actually improve on. With the right individuals in place and with the right structure in place, we can make sure that we do not have those situations again. So once again, these positions coming in-house are the positions that are listed, and it will be the Director of Food Service, the Food Service Technician, and the Food Service Admin. So that is the food service. And after we vote, there's one more thing about food service also.
Any comments from the board?
Dr. Coleman.
Yes.
Okay, these 3 positions, As far as the funding for those positions, is that going to affect the operating budget in any way?
The funding for the positions will not affect the operating budget. But when speaking of the operating budget, and Mr. Very helped me to clarify, of course, the overall budget for food service, so I just want to make a separation here, the 3 positions will not affect the operating budget, but overall, the food service budget will increase by $179,640. This is not due to the positions. This is due to a projection, a low projection by Aramark when we actually have when we got the budget in and we move forward with the 2024-2025 budget. So Aramark presented a budget of $2,783,560. After Ms. Hicks, Mr. Very, and Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Ruffin went through the budget and really streamlined everything, our projections came out a little differently. Our projections for the end of the year came to $2,963,200. That is a $179 increase, a $179,640 increase. So that is the increase. It's an overall increase. You have different areas that Ms. Hicks can go into a little bit more detail about that actually exemplifies more of the $179,640. And that's going to be always focused on the revenues. Ms. Hicks?
When we worked on the budget recently, we used historical data that we had access to. In other words, I could find in any of the information that I needed for the different categories of revenue. And anytime you have an increase in revenue, you're going to have an increase in expenses because you're going to have to buy more food. The increase in revenue comes from more students eating meals at school. And so, of course, that's going to increase the cost of food. You're going to need more labor and that sort of thing. Coming in-house brings everything under the school nutrition budget. It's totally covered. Every school nutrition department should be self-sufficient within the state, and most are self-sufficient and even capable of buying and replacing their own equipment and that sort of thing. That, in my opinion, and the almost 30 years I've worked in the business, does not happen under a food service management company. So is there any question about any of the particular increases or decreases in, basically it's the same line items, they just moved around. We're no longer spending that ton of money in purchase services from Aramark. Instead, it's being spread out over a food budget and labor budget and those sort of things.
So thank you. That's a lot of information. I'd like to back up just a little bit. I suspect there's some folks listening, perhaps in the audience sitting back there going, what are we talking about? So I'd like to kind of back up and just put it in some layman's terms here. Our last audit findings, we came up with some shortfalls. They were identified. One of those, as you mentioned, Dr. Coleman, was the F-bar. So I believe, Dr. Kramer, you keep me straight here, the termination of the contract with Aramark, we could rightly say that this is taking some accountability to correct some deficiencies.
That is correct.
Right. And I think that's important to point out. Mrs. Hicks, kudos to you and Mr. Ruffin for digging into this and getting this all straightened out. Some of the positives, and Dr. Coleman and you and I have talked about this a little bit, some of the positives to bringing the food services back to in-house. Could you speak to some of that?
Absolutely. We had a meeting it was Wednesday or Thursday, we had an employment meeting with Mr. Ruffin and Ms. Hicks led this meeting. And we brought in all of the Aramark employees and those employees as with IWCS. And we had a conversation with those individuals about coming back in and their thoughts and their feelings on it. It was extremely positive. It was extremely positive from everyone there. We had computers set up so the individuals can start the application process. And I don't even know, how long did you stay filling out applications, Mr. Ruffin? About an hour he stayed there just helping individuals filling out. Extremely positive moving forward with this. Just even on that section, we know we have summer school going on also, and even in summer school today, we had a visit from VDOE. And you can talk about that a little bit, Mr. Ruffin.
Good evening. So we had a visit from the state today, and she came in around about lunchtime, and she went over everything usually done at the same FPAR, and we passed with flying colors. We didn't have any findings on that day.
That's good to hear.
Mr. Chair, if I can, would you share with us the acronym FPAR? We've stated it a few times. Would you share what is that?
That is Federal Program Administrative Review. So it is focused on the administration of the program, watching your budget, controlling all your procedures and that sort of thing, basically what the administrators of the program are doing.
And with that, we just went from 9 different issues in the FPAR to the FPAR fully clear in less than, let's say, 45 days. I think that is a great start to bringing food service back in-house.
I'd say that's outstanding, and I applaud everybody who's had their fingers in that. Yeah, I have no doubt that there's some folks listening right now that are hearing food services. I'm pretty sure all of us got emails and phone calls over the course of the last school year about food quality. And I bet you Mr. Ruffin could tell us some stories, and I bet we could trade some pictures. I've got pictures that were sent to me by teachers to include my own kids. So I think all in all, we're moving in the right direction, and I applaud the effort.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, please go ahead. Go ahead.
One of the benefits of coming in-house is taking more control over every aspect of the operation, taking total control. When you're in there to make a buck versus when you're in there to do the very best for the students, it's your community, you want to feed them and you want to do it well, makes a huge difference in the quality and quantity even of the food.
Will we have the opportunity to source some of the food from the locality?
Actually, the Virginia Department of Education School Nutrition Department encourages lots of farm to school, keeping our food purchases local, keeping the money local. There's all kinds of things that can be done to have the food fresher. In my previous district, we bought from farmers who raised everything from cattle to beef or pork products to lettuces that were raised in aquaponics, where they use the fish. And we have, always been able to do that, but it's really encouraged now. So that's actually one of the things that will be worked on this coming year, certainly.
Awesome. I've got to ask one more, and I know you've got something to say. Is it an option or is it even legal to have our farm lab provide some of the food?
VDOE and USDA sees as the school district's farm as the perfect place to buy farm-to-school foods.
That's good to know. Sir?
I was just going to share, Mr. Chair, you alluded to this. I meet with our students often, students in all of our secondary schools, high, middle, and here at Westside. And once we started with the vendor, I said to the company and to our students, we were going to hold them accountable. And no question, they fell short. We had some significant issues, and all of our schools, our students unanimously shared that there were concerns with the quality of food. So as we move forward, Mrs. Hicks has stated it, I think, very clearly. It provides an atmosphere, an environment for us to be fully accountable. So we don't have to go through a third-party vendor. We don't have to call some corporate office. That will be all handled, and I can hold our staff members here accountable. They can hold me accountable to ensure that they're receiving the resources and supports they need to ensure that our students are getting the quality of food that they deserve. So this is going to provide more accountability to us locally as we move forward.
Thanks, Doc. I think one last comment. As you move forward with this transition, I think I can speak for everyone, to include Mr. Collick and Cunningham, that as you proceed forward, if you hit any stumbles or roadblocks or you need anything, call us, let us know what we can do to help. I think it's a good time for a motion if you'd be willing to do that, sir.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the 3 food service positions to include director, technician, and administrative positions.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further comments? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wooster?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. And that moves us to item 14.1, the monthly financials.
Good evening.
Ma'am, it's good to see you.
Good to see you. As you know, we are in the process of reconciling and closing out fiscal year 24. And based on certain assumptions as of today, I do project we will cover the deficit from last year and perhaps have a little bit after that. The biggest assumption is our sales tax, which we accrue for the months of July and August. And I won't know, I'll have the July amounts shortly, but I won't know the August amounts until probably middle of August. So, but I do project we will be covering the deficit.
It's good to hear you say that, because the last time I asked you that question, you looked very uncomfortable.
Well, every day we do some more reconciling and get things, closed out.
Thank you, ma'am.
With regard to the grants, we are making progress on getting those reimbursements in as well. My goal is to have all of them for fiscal year 24 in by the end of this month. And with regard to the fiscal year 25 budget, I've been in contact with the county about getting our school board budget amended. Since you approved an adjustment at your last meeting, the Board of Supervisors also needs to approve a like adjustment. Since the amount that we're asking them to adjust exceeds 1% of their total budget, a public hearing will be required. So it'll be August, if not September, before we do that. And I have suggested that we wait until we get the year, wrapped up, and we'll have grant balances, from fiscal year 24 that carry over into 25, and we just include that at the same time to amend the budget all just at one time.
So perhaps you can educate me, if not all of us. I assumed that when the supervisors approved their budget and sent it to us, that was a done deal. So you're saying they have to go back and re-bless it?
Yes, sir, because at your last meeting in June, we amended our budget because of the additional state revenue we received. So we need to have the Board of Supervisors appropriate those funds as well.
Got it. Understood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm sure they'll be delighted to know they have to have another hearing. Perhaps not.
Are there any other questions I can address?
After reviewing your grants report, I say kudos to you and staff. You guys have obviously made a lot of progress and put a lot of effort into getting that done. No head hurters. You're projected to get it done by the end of the month. So, again, that's good to hear. On your preliminary report, health fund. I'm going to ask this for the sake of transparency, and I don't mean to open up a can of worms, but it is what it is. Administration in the healthcare fund decreased 95%. I already know the answer because you gave it to me, but can you explain how that happened?
It decreased.
Yeah.
So in looking at the prior year's reports in the general ledger, I noticed that there were expenses posted to the wrong line item. So they should have been posted to medical and dental claims. So that's why it's looking as if it's overspent, but it is not, or was more.
Thank you. I asked that deliberately because I think it's another opportunity to point out the corrections that you're finding and continuing to make. So,
Yes.
Again, kudos to you. And then employee collections, they increased 59%.
Yes, that money represents those employees that after they have terminated, they continue to participate in our health insurance plan. So it's called the COBRA plan. And so we receive that money back from those retired employees for their cost of the health insurance.
Got it. That's all I got. Board members, anything else? Thank you, ma'am. Keep up the good work. $14.2, back to you, Doc Holman.
Sports Services update, Mr. Chair, school board members. Where do you see this fueled by numbers? Once again, it's just overall comparison from last year to this year and getting into the June time frame. There's nothing really outstanding to point out here, very similar in numbers here.
We're by far and large, we're on par with the previous year now.
Right. And as you already know, as gas prices go up, go down, fuel prices just fluctuate. Yeah. So it's hard to say that, we need to do this with fuel or not because it's such a hard fluctuation.
Right.
All right. Next is the Fleet Services end of the year data. This is the data that Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Fike had an opportunity to put together just to show the investment into fleet service, and this is the outcome for that. Increased labor hours, and of course, the takeaway for that is the increase of 255% indirect labor hours over 2 years. That is outstanding. And things that the mechanics and the individuals down at Fleet Service are doing are outstanding.
Say it again. It's outstanding.
It is outstanding.
Have they done this with the same amount of personnel?
The same amount of personnel, exactly. Was it the same amount of personnel, Laura? Was it increased? Okay. They filled 2 vacancies for that. It was vacancies already there, but they filled those 2 vacancies, and that's what assisted greatly with the increase.
Yeah. Those folks back there, I think they're often unsung heroes. They do a lot of work that doesn't often get recognized. So appreciate you bringing this to our attention and for the public. I spoke with you and Dr. Kramer. I don't know the appropriate way, but perhaps some sort of recognition is due for this. Thoughts? Yeah. I mean, that's a heck of a number, so.
Totally agree with you. So, Ms. Briggs, you and I will be having a conversation about finding other ways. So I do want to note that they have received awards and recognition from us, but there's certainly more we can do given the work that these gentlemen have done for us.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we've already crossed that road. I don't know why. A visit and a handshake probably goes a long way, and I'll certainly make it a point to do that again in the near future.
Absolutely.
So.
All right.
Thank you.
Of course, this is the June work orders. The reports for the June work order requests have been sent out, meaning all principals have received what's going on in their buildings right now to prepare for the students to return in September. The work order, total open work orders right now, 596, and you already know the expectation is 0 by the end of the summer. Are there any questions concerning that?
Head herders, everything is on track?
Everything is on track. Everything is on track. Speaking of track, what I want to show you is a picture of the, let's just go with that 1 second. Yeah, all right. This is Smithfield. Well, this was Smithfield High School. As you can see, as soon as we were allotted the funds, we started the progress on the fields. I give a big kudos to Ms. Cuffey and all the Mr. Doolin, Coach Doolin, and everyone else that had a part in the preparation for this field to get it started moving along. Of course, we have our backs against the wall when it comes to football season, the schedule, and different things that are going on. So everything had to work coincidentally to get the company out there, kill all of the grass, take all of the grass up, put the sprinkler heads in, bring in the topsoil, crown the field, and then actually put the Bermuda grass back down and then turn the sprinklers on. The field will have to sit dormant without any use. Go to the next one. You will have to sit dormant without any use for 30 days. So that's a good picture of the new Smithfield High School football field there.
That's current.
That is current now.
That's outstanding.
As you, the drainage is corrected, the sprinklers are corrected, crown, and of course now we have the Bermuda soil. So outstanding.
So are they going to roll into the track?
We're working through the final negotiations of the track, and we have the time because now that was actually completed yesterday, we have to let it sit for 30 days to let the roots actually get into the ground. So it's being watered, not today, but normally it's being watered and letting the roots dig in for 30 days before we actually can take field. But during that time period, we're going to work on the contracts for the track. And at the same time, now we have a company moving into Windsor. Today was the first start of the Windsor football field, so I will make sure that you have highlights of that also.
How's that going to work with the drainage issues over there?
Okay, there's two items with drainage. There's drainage on the football field that will be completed, but at the same time, we're still investigating those other drainage issues in the parking lot. We literally, last week, we just had another issue with drainage in the student parking lot. So we have the plans out. We're reviewing several different options, talking to different community members that have a little bit more historical background to it, and trying to figure out a game plan for the overall issue, how to solve the overall issue without tearing up everything, Church Street, the entire parking lot, and just rebuilding everything. So we're trying to still work through a plan at this time.
So sinkholes aside, they are working on Windsor's field as well.
Yes, sinkholes aside, they're working on the Windsor field.
Good deal.
Absolutely. All right. I think that is it. The last two things I want to bring to you is two items with donations. I want to give a big shout out to Miss Dawn Carroll and Coach the AD Gaddis. Wrote a grant that you will have in your donation package. And the grant is for OBC Healthcare Foundation, and it was a total budget award of $49,462.72. And this is something that Coach Gaddis and Don Curl worked on together to write this grant, and they received it for the renovation of the Windsor High School tennis courts. So I just want to give a big shout out to them for that. Secondly, Carsville. Ms. Outland has worked diligently with an outside group for the placement and the building of a basketball court. This started months ago. It was a student project that led into more. And at this time, there's been a donation of $40,000 for the materials, labor, and supplies of the basketball courts at Carsville on the playground. And it's once again student-led, and Ms. Outland is really a big supporter of that.
It's awesome news. It really is. It's awesome news. Yeah. Like I told you, just sheer coincidence, over 4th of July weekend, I was camping with another family, parents of a student at Carsville, and they were telling me how their students put together a presentation. And she was like, "What are you guys going to do about the basketball court?" I had no answer. So,
right.
Super excited to pick up the phone and
Absolutely.
call them.
And I'm pretty sure that a lot of other individual teachers and instructors assisted with this, and I will make sure that when we do the full presentation for this, they will be given acknowledgement also.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Ms. Sullivan.
Okay, so it's this time of year for vacancy reports that we've been doing last couple years over the summer. So I'm here to share that at the beginning of this summer, we started with 128 vacancies, and we are down to 33. Of that, 10 of those are classroom teachers. We have 7 SPED teachers, 2 resource teachers, 11 support staff members, 1 interventionist, 2 counselors, and 1 school nurse, and 1 clerical position that we are still trying to fill. And that's also like an announcement for anyone who wants to apply for a job with us to take a look at our website. But I'll answer any questions that you might have about vacancies, school specific that you have. I can answer those for you.
Mr. Wooster? Just a comment, last year I think we started the school year with 11 vacancies.
For classrooms, yes. And we're down to 10 at this point.
So you're ahead of last year.
Yep.
Just for teachers?
Yes, just for the teachers, yeah.
That's awesome. Biggest concerns?
So I would say my biggest concerns right now are just filling our elementary. All of them are super important, but we have a lot less flexibility at the elementary level as far as like paying for extra blocks for coverage of courses. And so I do have a concern about that. And we, this year, thankfully, due to iTeach, the program that we bought on for an alternate path to licensure, we've been able to hire internally 5 long-term substitutes that will start the year as long-term subs, but that will be working very quickly to their provisional licensure through the iTeach program to then bring them in as classroom teachers. So my biggest concerns are really just the amount of support that some of our applicants and our candidates this year will need coming in, not having had the traditional pathway to licensure, and ensuring that we are ready at the central office level to offer that support. We have a great team in the instruction team, but just knowing that that's going to take a lot of focus from us at central office is supporting those teachers who don't come in with the traditional background in their student teaching and that sort of thing.
Point taken. How many SPED teachers are we short right now?
For special education, we have 5 total.
I would assume some of those may be some of the 3 that we had to add to this year's budget for compliance requirements.
Yes.
So what happens if we can't fill those vacancies and we're not in compliance? What happens?
So we would look to see if there's any kind of movement that we need to make with caseloads and shifting potential positions, but that would be a last resort. So we would work with our special education department to look at how we could best staff all of our schools with the special education staff that we have. And then long-term subs, yes.
And we can hire long-term subs for SPED?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. They can serve in that role for up to 90 days. Yes, so they will not be able to be a case manager, but they can provide the services that are written by the case manager. So one of our teachers who is licensed would have to assist with the caseload management of those students, writing the IEPs, which is additional workload for them. But then we could use the substitute to implement those services through the IEP process to offset some of the workload that they would be taking on by doing the case management work.
Thanks. Any other comments? Okay, thank you, ma'am.
All right.
I think it's a good time to take 5, Mr. Wooster? Ms. Perkins? Take a 5-minute recess. All right, let's get this going again. Sullivan?
Yes, hi. Mr. Christensen and myself are here to give you an overview of Title IX, similar to the overview that special education gave. It's more just informational for the board in terms of a topic that we take care of here in Wight County Schools. So we're going to start with Mr. Christensen.
Yes, thank you. And this is a very broad, high-arching, overview of Title IX. It's quite complex, but Ms. Sullivan and I will give some of the broad strokes and overview tonight. So what Title IX is it's a federal law. It's enforced by OCR, Office of Civil Rights, and it specifically prohibits discrimination based on sex. Historically, it's viewed as requiring gender equity in athletics. That's what many people think of when they hear Title IX. However, it's more far-reaching than that. That's just the first thing that comes to people's mind when they hear Title IX. Specifically, the law states that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So that specifically is what the law states in relation to Title IX. So what informs those compliance obligations? Well, it comes from a number of different sources. The regulations, most recent 2020 regulations are what you use to guide our Title IX compliance. Also, OCR will put down guidance and resolutions that we also use to inform compliance. And then lastly, state law, court cases at both the federal and state level. Combination of those three resources is what we use to ensure compliance and inform our decisions.
Mr. Christensen, is there a reference, if I wanted to go read up on these regulations and guidance and resolutions, where would I go?
So yes, there's a variety of resources, but the Title IX has its own federal website. I think would be straight from the horse's mouth would be where I would go. We also utilize other companies and resources if you want to get more specifically into it, but that would be the first place that I would start. Ms. Sullivan has more experience in this than I. If you have another resource, I'm sure you'd be happy to share, but that's where I would go first.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. And then, so we use those compliance guidance, the compliance guidance from those organizations to inform our own school board policy. So each school board is charged with having its own Title IX policy. Ours is listed on our website. And so anyone who experiences or witnesses an alleged act that might constitute Title IX has the ability to review that and then make a report to the compliance officers. And so I'm going to move a little bit into the next slide, which is talking more specifically about what Title IX is. Like Mr. Christensen said, historically people immediately connect Title IX with access in sports and athletics. That's a topic that gets a lot of media coverage. I have to give a shout out to my 9th grade English teacher, Jane Langford at Windsor High School, who introduced me to Title IX at a young age. She took me as a typical teenager who very much cared about things that were unfair in the world and sports at the time. And so that was my first exposure to Title IX, was doing my 9th grade research paper on that topic. And so then full circle, now being the compliance officer for the last 2 years with that has been really interesting. And so I've gained a lot of knowledge in the last couple of years in working through this process, both through the guidance documents and of course through the advisement of PAC, our lawyer, who has assisted us in this process as well, and training through institutional compliance solutions that we work with to provide those resources to us for training. And so I'm going to share with you some more specifics about Title IX in terms of the definition for sexual harassment. There are 3 different real kind of buckets is how we like to think about them when it comes to Title IX. There's one that, the first one is quid pro quo, which only applies in the situation of an employee relationship. And so that's when an employee is the recipient or conditioning of a provision, aid, benefit, or service, and the recipient on the individual's participation in unwelcome sexual conduct. The second one, which is the one that I would say most school divisions, including ours, deal with the most, is unwelcomed conduct determined by a reasonable person to be so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it effectively denies a person's equal access to the recipient's education, program, or activity. And then the last bucket is sexual assault. It also includes dating violence, domestic violence, or stalking. And so we use definitions from both the Clery Act and then also the FBI's reporting to define exactly what falls under sexual assault and dating violence. Again, on the next one, you'll see we use that definition from the FBI's crime reporting system. There are 4 different types of sexual assault that we as a school division are in charge of receiving reports on, investigating, and determining responsibility for. Those are rape, fondling, incest, and statutory rape. You might see some of those, especially, and then going into the next slide, additional forms, which are dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking. And you might think, well, these seem like criminal offenses. Why is the school investigating them and not the police? Often it's a concurrent investigation. Sometimes we work simultaneously with the police through our SRO and then whatever investigators they assign. Or we might work separately in our own investigations. But of course, we are reporting any of these incidences, but we do have a responsibility to investigate them separately. We cannot rely on law enforcement to provide us with determination of a Title IX offense.
Does the alleged offense have to occur on school grounds?
Yep, and we're going to get to that yet. Okay, so some other additional forms can also be bullying, hazing, vandalism, or arson when they are motivated by an act of discrimination based in gender or sex. And there's also types of Title IX that we talked about. That's kind of that one that a lot of people think about is program access decisions. So when we make decisions to access or resource availability, whether it be admission into or participation in clubs, athletics, hiring, firing, and promotions that might be deemed to be motivated in a decision based on gender or sex, that can also be a Title IX violation. Okay. So you might be wondering what initiates the formal process of Title IX, and that would be a report that meets one of those definitions that occurred in the educational program or activity. More specifically, the school has to, or the division has to determine that we had substantial control over the complainant and the respondent when they were engaged in that activity, and it has to occur within a program. So it doesn't have to be on school campus. It can be at an off-school campus event. It can be at a professional development if it's affecting employees. It can be anything that is in some way related to the educational program or activity. Some important terms related to that, when you have a report that is made, you then have a complainant and a respondent. Title IX is very conscious of not assuming guilt or assuming responsibility of an act until after an investigation has thoroughly been completed. And so we try really hard to stay away from comments or stay away from the verbiage of a victim or a perpetrator in that regard. So you would have a person who is the complainant and a person who is the person responding to that or the respondent. So you'll see this is a chart, and this is actually a guidance document that's provided to us from ICS, which is the organization that we work with to provide us with specific training and compliance tools that help us train our employees on Title IX. And so you'll see on this, there's a process flow chart. So sexual harassment of some sort is reported to a school district employee. From that, supportive measures are offered. So specifically here in Isle of Wight, all employees within our district are trained on the definition of what Title IX is, or what kind of acts might fall under a Title IX violation, and then they are told to call the compliance officer or this Title IX coordinator. And so from there, any kind of those, so really the training for all of our employees is first how to identify Title IX, and when a report is being shared with you, how to parse that out from any kind of other student misconduct, because then that is immediately reported to the Title IX coordinator and, of course, law enforcement if it involves anything that might be potentially a crime. Immediately from a Title IX coordinator's perspective, we offer supportive measures. The most important thing when there is a potential Title IX violation is that all of those parties are supported because it's obviously a pretty serious offense. And so we offer supportive measures to both the respondent and to the complainant, and of course any other parties that might be involved as well, like witnesses who might need supportive measures. Supportive measures can vary from class schedule change options for students. For employees, it might include a room change if that is in close proximity to the person that is the respondent, or in both cases. So we offer those. We cannot institute any supportive measures that might be construed as a discipline action. And so during the supportive measure process, we have to provide equal access to both the respondent and complainant to the services that they were receiving in the educational program prior to the report being made. So those all have to stay the same. But we do offer, it could be a class schedule change. We offer guidance services or school counseling services to the students. We offer, like for example, additional bell changes, that sort of thing. So we offer supportive measures in order to ensure that students are able to access their education, or employees are able to access their work environment while we go through the process. There is, you see off to the right, a box that says emergency removal. There is in the situation where it involves 2 students, the bar is very high for being able to remove a student from the school setting until the investigation has been completed. And the bar is such that the physical safety of the complainant has to be at risk in order to implement emergency removal. And so at that point, if we feel like the complainant's or other students' safety, physical safety is at risk, we can institute an emergency removal and provide access to the education outside of school. So then after that, we look at, so with supportive measures are offered, we offer then the ability for the complainant to file a formal complaint. If the complainant files a formal complaint, we would move on to the notice of allegations. If the complainant does not want to file a formal complaint, we can either, the Title IX coordinator can determine that the act is, or the allegations are so severe that they are going to sign off and move forward with the Title IX complaint, or we can offer supportive measures to the complainant but institute no discipline actions because the investigation has not been completed. The next step after a formal complaint is to provide notice of allegations, which specifically lays out the date, time, and acts, and the date and time if available, and then all of this very specific acts that took place that are alleged to have happened that would meet the definition of Title IX. There's then an investigation, a resolution or a determination, and then there's the appeal process. As far as the roles that are played in this, there's of course the Title IX coordinator, who then provides training and also follow-up and facilitation of the other roles to the right. So we have investigators, which typically in our school division are assistant principals or principals. We then have decision makers who, if it's not a principal, so if in a standard investigation, an AP would be the investigator, the principal would be the decision maker, and a director at central office would serve as an appellant decision maker. I have served as an informal resolution facilitator. Responsible employees are also, we have not used that role in our division, but they are ones that can be reported to, but don't have to institute the Title IX process.
Who designates these people? Is that the coordinator?
Yes, so the coordinator, so whenever a report is brought to the coordinator then deems who's going to be the person who's responsible for the roles in that particular case. All of these individuals, can you go back to that slide really quick? All of the individuals in this have to be specifically trained on their role. So all of our administrators go through the basic Title IX training, and then our APs, principals, and directors go through investigator decision maker training, and then our central office directors go through additionally the appellant decision maker training as well. So they have to be specifically trained on what their role looks like and the documents that they have to produce in making those decisions. To give you an idea around the investigative timeline, so the investigation starts as soon as a formal complaint is made. We prepare the notice of allegations, notice to all of those that are going to be interviewed. So different from a student conduct or misconduct investigation, there's a lot of very specific timelines and also notices that have to be provided to everyone involved. So for example, if a student skips class, say for example, and is unrelated to a Title IX allegation, AP might immediately call that student out of class, question them on the behavior, do the investigation, provide the discipline. With Title IX, a notice prior to, with sufficient a time for the person, the party, to prepare for the interview has to be given. So we typically look at 24 hours that a person in our school is, before they're going to initiate an investigative interview, they have to prepare and share in writing a notice that they are going to be interviewed concerning the allegations. And so we provide the notice of allegations, they get notified of the interview, and then we set up the interview. And so in that regard, we try to wrap up all of our initial investigations within 5 days. And then we move into the opportunity to inspect and review evidence related to each allegation. So Title IX, one of the tenets of it is that it's a very transparent process. So after the investigation has been completed, both the respondent and the complainant are provided with all of the evidence that was collected, including witness statements, videos, complainant statements, respondent statements, teacher statements. These also include the identification of those who provided information. And both the complainant and the respondent are given 10 days to review that information. After that during that 10-day period, they can provide a response where they respond to the evidence. Then we move into an investigative report. The investigator, who is typically, like I said, either an AP or a principal, writes an investigative report where they share the evidence related to each allegation. The investigative report is then shared with the complainant and the respondent. They then are given an additional 10 days to review the final report and provide a written response. And then there is that report is then passed on to, and the responses are passed on to the decision maker, who then has only 10 days to provide their decision to the respondent and the complainant about findings of responsibility. So on each allegation, they have to determine whether or not there's evidence to substantiate, a preponderance of evidence to substantiate if that student or that employee is responsible for the allegations. And then there is an appeal process. So this is a lot of information, but very surface level, honestly, when it comes to the complexity of Title IX. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Last year, how many reports did you get?
So this past year, I would say we had approximately, I have to go back and look at my chart, but I would say we had 20 reports. And then we had 7 investigations.
If you had to stick a time limit on an investigation, how long do you think that took?
So I would say comprehensively between all of the parties, I would say starting with the investigation piece, it would just take about 40 hours per an investigation through the whole case.
40 hours for one staff member or 40 hours collectively?
I would say that that's divided over the investigator and decision maker. The Title IX coordinator is operating alongside the investigation throughout. I will say there are some days as the coordinator that all 8 hours of my day was devoted to that one particular case. But then there's plenty of days where, while the investigation is happening during the 10-day review period, where I might just be responding to emails here or there from the respondent or the complainant with questions that they might have. And so that varies, but between the investigator, decision maker, and appellant decision maker, I would say easily 40 hours per case that we would investigate.
So roughly 7 weeks of last school year were spent doing Title IX investigations.
As a whole, yes, as staff, yep. Mm-hmm.
Comments, questions? It's a lot. It's a lot to digest. Having been involved with the military since 1997, this is all very familiar. We have different acronyms.
Yep.
Sexual assault victim prevention. And we have to sit through this every 6 months. We're required to. And I would assume that something similar goes on with the staff. It's probably all very synonymous.
Mhm. Yeah, we have annual training requirements.
Okay. You're the Title IX compliance officer, and I know that one of our next agenda items is going to roll right into that. So
Yes.
I'll hold my questions.
Okay.
Anything else? Dr. Kramer?
Just thank Mrs. Sullivan, HR, and the support of Mr. Christensen for all the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys putting this together. I mean, it's informative for not only the board, but anybody watching and listening to know that there's a lot of stuff going on that you may or may not see or hear about.
Yeah.
Okay. And that takes us into 14.5, appointment of compliance officers.
Yes. So one of the things that I didn't mention in the PowerPoint, but is that the Title IX coordinator is unable to serve in any other role related to Title IX. So if you're the coordinator, you cannot be an investigator, you cannot be a decision maker. And so in that regard, we are looking at, we have proposed that we move Mr. Christensen into the role of the Title IX coordinator, which would provide me with the opportunity of being the investigator when it's related to employee issues. And so it provides me the opportunity to serve in that investigative role when it's related to employees and not be in the Title IX coordinator role. So Mr. Christensen would be taking over that. And really, Title IX coordinator can be any position that you have. It's in some divisions, it is a position as of itself, and in others, it's a supplementary role for others. As previous years, Mrs. Colleen Loud would serve as the alternate Title IX coordinator in Mr. Christensen's absence. Additionally, there were times this year where we had 2 Title IX cases concurrently running, and so she would serve in one Title IX coordinator, and I would serve as the other. And then I would remain the compliance officer for Section 504 for employees, and Trish Magner, who's our special education director, would remain the compliance officer for Section 504 for students. And this is a notification that all of our new employees sign so that they know who to contact in cases of needing to report non-compliance.
Okay, and this is just an informational from superintendent. Any comments, sir?
No, I think Mrs. Sullivan articulated it very well, and that's why we're making this personnel change.
So no doubt you're obviously well-versed in all this. Are you available to assist as needed?
Yes, absolutely. So we've been working together through some trainings and make the transition smooth to make sure that we carry this out well.
Okay.
So,
Good. Thank you. All right, moving right along. The next is 14.6, another informational item, unpaid meal charge regulation, not policy. They got you.
We changed the item, remember, Dr. Coleman. Thank you.
So everything's already been changed over. So it's regulation.
Yeah, it's just for information.
Absolutely. Are there any questions concerning? It's been presented, talked about 2 school board meetings ago, and then, of course, presented last school board meeting as a action item now with informational, so being a regulation. Are there any questions concerning?
I think we're good, unless you have anything you want to add. It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, not at all. Just for the cut and dry.
I've just got one thing. I don't have the regulation in front of me, so I apologize for that, but I do remember towards the end of the policy where it's describing collection of unpaid debt. and it goes into, I'm trying to remember just off the top of my head. It goes into pretty much adverse actions. There we go. Trying to find it. Okay, under the actions, collection procedures for delinquent and bad debt, adverse action number 4. It says actions will include the parent receiving a notification / notice of adverse action stating collection procedures have begun. Nowhere in this policy have I seen where it states what type of adverse action could occur. And I'm putting myself in the position of someone that may receive this letter. So I'm kind of thinking that something needs to be in there to explain what could potentially happen.
Okay. And it's going to be phone calls and communication. That's the key to the entire policy. Just ensuring that communication is held way before we get to the position where there's so many meals that have been added to the the students that they're no longer should be getting those meals. So it's all about communication to the parent, communication to the family, just communication. And that communication can stem from, as we have it set up now, sometimes from the principal of the school, sometimes for individuals in the food service. But it will be laid out as communication to the parent to let them know what's going on.
Okay, that was all I had.
Absolutely.
Anything? Thanks, Doc.
No problem.
Dr. Kramer, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this gives me an opportunity for the superintendent's July update. And some wonderful things occurred last month, so let's start. Mr. Cootwriter, do you have me loaded, sir?
Yes, sir.
As he is doing that, I will start with our ISLE Award presentations as the PowerPoint gets loaded. It is always a pleasure to recognize our ISLE Award winners for the previous month. So we recognized the June recipients, as you see there. Top left, the Inspire Award was presented to Mr. Charlie Lee, one of our bus drivers. Top right, the Succeed Award was presented to Ms. Alexis Jefferson in technology. And bottom left, the Empower Award was presented to Ms. Kristen Formella. And bottom right, the lead award was presented to Dr. Marsha Kale. And I don't think any of them are here at the moment. I'm sure some are watching. So I'm going to ask, let's give these recipients a well-deserved round of applause. And next we have the Smithfield High and Windsor High graduations. And as you see, some great photos there. We had 2 great graduations on Friday, June 14th at Liberty Live for Smithfield and Windsor. It is always such a joyous occasion to be a part of our graduations, and thank you to both high schools for doing a great job of honoring our students. And I would like to brag a little bit about both schools' graduating classes. Smithfield High had 298 graduates with 130 recognized as honor graduates, and the 2024 graduating class earned a combined $4.3 million in scholarship money. Again, $4.3 million in scholarship money. So huge credit to our students there at Smithfield. Windsor High graduated 131 students with 45 recognized as honor graduates, and their 2024 graduating class earned a combined $2.5 million in scholarship money. A huge congratulations to our graduates, our educators, and our families. And actually, I think we have one out there in the audience. So thank you to all who have made this possible. I think there are many more photos that Mr. Elliott has on our website. Also, let's give our incredible graduates from both Windsor and Smithfield a well-deserved round of applause for those who are watching. Next, our Leadership Summit. So following the graduation that Friday, our administrators and other school leaders were already, can you advance there? Oh, it's a little delayed. All right, thank you. Sorry to beat up on you there, Mr. Coopwriter. They were already at work planning just the next work day, actually, and you will see the educators fashionably attired in their Hawaiian wear as we were reflecting on the past year and immediately planning, preparing, and thinking about the upcoming year. And these are all of our school leaders, both school-based and central office leaders there, planning and preparing for the next year as we reflected on the previous year. And I think the Hawaiian theme just stated we want you to take some time, have a little bit of downtime between the end of the year and as we're preparing for next year. So huge credit to all of our educators for all the work that they're doing currently to prepare for the next school year. Next, we have our fleet services staff who completed the essential electrical training course. This course allows fleet services technicians to better understand electricity and will serve as a foundation to enhance their skills and ultimately further decrease downtime of vehicles in our fleet due to electrical issues. Thank you for all that you're doing for our school division, Mr. Sullivan, and your dedicated staff. We recognize and appreciate all that you do, Mr. Chair. As you stated earlier, you and I had a discussion earlier about the incredible work that these gentlemen do, keeping our very limited fleet on the road, ensuring that our students are able to get to and from school safely and efficiently. So thank you for all that you're doing, gentlemen in the Fleet Services Department. And next and last, we have summer school. School seemingly just ended, but our summer school began on Monday, July 8th, and will continue through Thursday, July 25th. Students will experience enrichments in reading and math. Congratulations to our summer school students on their first successful week of summer school this week. And summer school this year is actually being held at Hardy Elementary. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my update.
Doc, do you know how many seats we filled at the summer school? I'm looking at you and looking at Mrs. Getz.
170? Okay.
That's pretty good, huh? Better than last year.
Excellent.
Good.
Very good.
We good? All right, moving right along. That takes us to 16.1. It's an action item. Report, personnel report and addendum.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the personnel report and addendum as presented, a copy of which can be obtained from the school board clerk.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wooster?
Yes.
And Mr. Marsh?
Yes, motion passes. Item 16.2, exchange student.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve exchange student 2425-02 for admission to Smithfield High School for semester 1 of the 2024-2025 school year.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk.
Mrs. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wooster?
Yes.
And Mr. Marsh?
Yes, motion passes. Action on old business, 17.1, consent agenda, meeting minutes, field trips, donation memo, and financials.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as attached and presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments? I'll take this opportunity to give the clerk a plug. Kudos on doing the minutes. I dig through every one of them. It's painful for me. I can only imagine how painful for you it is. Then we'll take a vote, please.
Mrs. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Wooster?
Yes.
And Mr. Marsh?
Yes, motion passes. Bear with All right, so this takes us to item 18.1, and I asked to put this on the agenda, just kind of an informational for the board, the staff, as well as the listening audience. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot to add, but I will backfill you with what I know. So on June the 6th, the Board of Supervisors had a discussion during a work session, and they proposed forming a county financial audit committee. So I watched that. I watched some of it twice and listened intently. And I actually reached out to the Board of Supervisors and said, hey, folks, you know, we're standing by ready and willing to be available and participate in that in any form or capacity that they see necessary. I did touch base this afternoon with Supervisor Roundtree and Supervisor McCarthy. They have not made a final determination on how they're going to do it. They're still sorting out the details. So, you know, it caught my attention because I know that when you presented and we approved your corrective actions following our audit and our deficit situation, one of the things that we identified was that we would reach out, we meaning the finance department would reach out early and often with the county finance department to make sure that we were prepared for audits, so on and so forth. So I think this works hand in hand. I'm anxious to see what the supervisors come up with this. I really don't have anything else to add until they finalize it.
If I may add, Mr. Chair, do you think it's important to note that as we formalize this with the respective boards, the county administrator and I and our staff, we meet regularly. In fact, he and I will be meeting next week. Additionally, Mrs. Zaveri has been meeting with their staff as well, and I think she had a meeting with members of their finance department as late as last week. So we, I think, again, it's important for us to state, are in constant communication with our colleagues from county government's finance department.
Good. All good stuff, sir. Any other comments? Okay. We'll move right along. That takes us to 18.2, policies for first read. Policy JN. Any comments on that?
I've just got one. Dealing with the senior class dues, where it's showing it's annotated going from $75 to $90. What is prompting that change?
Yes, so as with everything else, as prices have increased, so has prices for the things that they want to do with the senior class. And these cover things throughout the year, such as breakfast for the students, lunch for the students at certain times of the year. If they do a field day, they do T-shirts. The schools don't exactly do the same thing, Windsor and Smithfield, but they do provide other like activities where they recognize their seniors. So the principals requested an increase just because everything has increased in the cost. And so they felt like they needed to do that in order to continue to do the special things for the senior class.
Okay. And if you would just, you know, for the knowledge of the people here, for the knowledge of the people watching this, and especially for the parents, the Health Occupation Students of America dues, can you give a brief overview of exactly what that is so people understand?
So it's an organization for students to join. It's not actually happened yet, but we anticipate adding this organization, and it's really for any student who is interested in a job in the field of health. And so that would be for the dues, like we have to pay student dues in order to be a member of the organization.
Thank you. That's all I've got.
Okay. Is the $90 fee able to be opted out?
$90 fee for
the senior class?
No. I mean, those are the dues.
Is there a help for lower income?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Pending any other comments, we'll move along to the last one for the evening. That's 19.1, board committee reports, participation. Ladies first, Ms. Perkins. Okay, Mr. Wooster.
only have one thing, and I'm just going to kind of build on what Dr. Coleman was speaking about with the Smithfield High School football field. I actually went by there yesterday after talking to you, Dr. Coleman. I got curious. I wanted to check it out and see what the progress looked like. So I was able to get up there, and they were putting down the last of the sod, and I was truly impressed. That does not look like the same field. Being, a graduate of Smithfield High, having played on that actual field in the past, there is one thing that I asked him specifically, and I'm glad to get the answer I did. All of those stupid, crazy sandburrs are gone. So, great job, excellent, it looks great, that's all I've got.
Thanks, sir. Dr. Kramer, last chance.
I will just concur with Mr. Vice Chair Wooster. I, too, have visited over there, and I'm very impressed with the speed of the work that is going on. It looks great, and we will continue to provide you with updates as we continue to move forward with the CIP improvements.
Thanks, sir. I guess I'll just say give kudos to Principal Carroll, Principal Cuffey, Dr. Kale, and everybody else that was involved in planning and coordinating and making the high school graduations a complete success. It was really a neat experience. All 5 school board members were up there. It was an honor to be up there. Looking forward to seeing another one. So, pending any other comments, we'll call it a night. It's not even 8 o'clock. Meeting's adjourned.